Okay, so I just will tell you a bit about myself and then get into the company and then some of the clients we work on and then bring up 2 or 3 issues that I think would be good dinner discussion. So I was born in Chicago. My family, my dad was the first to be born in America. My mom was the first to be born in America. So both families came in the 1880s, 1890s. Actually, my maternal grandmother came in 1916 or something, 1917 during World War I. Whenever it was, 1908. So she was, anyway. So my mother was the first born in America. My parents met on a blind date in Chicago, got married, which is good because we're here as a result. And we went to Chicago Latin for our grade school and middle school, and then both went to Exeter for high school. And then Renee chose Yale, and I went to Harvard, and that's the story. And then I went to Harvard B School, and Renee went to Columbia Journalism School. And I went straight into the family business in 1978. Renee was a journalist for 5 years?
Yeah, 5 or 6. And
then went into Edelman. So I've been in the business now 36, bridging 37 years as of May. And it's the only company I've worked for in my professional life. But I did summer internships at a oil company, at a meatpacking company, at a technology company. And a bank, a boring bank, which was really boring. Yep, lending files.
Wasn't Goldman Sachs
then, no, and there were no all-nighters in those days. There were banker's hours, which means 5 o'clock, out the door, gone. And long liquid lunches with clients in the construction industry, which I was taken to one, and they laughed at me. So it was funny. It was fine. It was okay. When I joined Edelman, we were about $6 million in fees. We had offices in Chicago, which was the headquarters, New York, Washington, London, San Francisco, that's it. And today we are about almost all in $900 million in fees, and we in 66 cities with about 5,500 people. 5,600 people all in. And so it's a great family business story. My family, mom and dad both passed away in 2013, but the second generation, Renee, me, and my brother John, all work in the business. And then 2 of my kids, who are the only, third generation. There are 3 third generations. 2 of the 3 are working in the business, and one of them is at Stanford. I took her here to look.
We'll forgive her.
Exactly. You'll have to. You'll have to. Just to tell you a little bit about the firm and what the business is like. So the PR business actually started in the sort of 20s in the United States, and then spread to UK and then to English-speaking countries. It's actually a bit of an outgrowth of show business. It started in a certain way, publicizing stars and starlets and, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford and all that stuff. And it morphed into corporate PR in the sort of late 20s, early 30s. There was a guy named Ivy Lee who was doing work for John D. Rockefeller and advised him to give dimes to poor kids. And anyway, there are legends about all these characters. The first big PR firm was Hill & Knowlton, which was started about 80 years ago. So it's not as old as the advertising business. So for example, J. Walter Thompson would be 150 years old in the ad business. So it's just a much older business, the ad business, and a more global business. So the biggest firm in the PR business is actually Edelman. We are 85% family owned, 15% is held by the senior people. We have somehow been able to miraculously do this because it's actually proven that not being part of a holding company, not being part of WPP or Omnicom or Interpublic, everybody said 10 years ago we were going to be lunch meat or dog meat or roadkill or whatever. And we've proven, in fact, that if you move quickly, if you particularly move quickly after recessions, We didn't reduce staff in 2001 when there was the dot-com bust, and we didn't reduce staff in 2008 when the world fell apart. And so we just sucked it up and didn't make any money for about a year and just kept our staff. And when the rebound came, we were the best ones positioned to take it. And also people went, God, you didn't fire me. I'm so happy to be at Edelman, for real. And there's an important lesson in that. You should pay attention to this because if you're a public company, you have to just make whatever margin you have to make. And they don't care in Wall Street. You have to make your 15% margin, even if you're shrinking by 10 or 15%, and then you're catching a falling knife because you got to reduce staff by 20 or 25%. So in our business, more or less, if our revenues are $850 million, about 60 to 65% is in compensation, about 10 to 12% is in rent, about 10 to 12% is in so-called general operating expenses, travel and new business and stuff. And the rest, which is, profit, is, 12, 14% pre-tax. And we pay out somewhere between 30 and 35% of our pre-tax in bonuses. So the family makes about 4 to 5% after tax, which is fine. It's a nice, steady business. We have no debt. We are very humble. We don't make big acquisitions. We do small acquisitions. We make acquisitions in order to expand our geographic footprint. So when I told you we started in 1978, when I started, we had 5 or 6 offices. Now we're in 66. Well, in most of those places, we bought small firms. And what we do is we buy a monoline firm, so a firm that's excellent in consumer or in healthcare or in tech or in corporate, and then we add the other pieces. And so our business breaks down more or less. The top 20 clients are about a third of the fees. The next 80 clients are a third of the fees, and all the rest, which would be several hundred, would be a third of the fees. And if you look at our business by line of business, our original business, which my dad started when he was the genius who invented the so-called media tour, where he took the Tony twins, which twin has the Tony, home permanence, which all of you are looking very blankly. I can completely understand it would be your great-grandmothers who would have done this. Home permanence, little waves. You couldn't tell which one had the salon done one or the one out of the box. So more or less the consumer products business, which is Starbucks or Unilever or Kraft or Heinz or the Dairy Management Group or Barilla or Trojan, or the consumer products is more or less 28% of our business, give or take. Healthcare is somewhere 15 to 18, depending on the year. Tech is 15 to 18%. Our financial service business is about 4%. Retailing is about 4 or 5%. Then we have a crisis management business, which is high margin but small, 2%. Corporate business, so I work for Eco-Imagination for GE, for example, which you would know something about, a lot about. So our corporate business is somewhere about 15% of our business. In public affairs, where we're working for the government of Panama, for example, to go to the third lane for the canal, get approval from their people, and then also get the eco groups to chime in and say it's okay, and to fight the Nicaragua Canal, very importantly, quietly. It'll ruin Lake Nicaragua, remember that, is about just under 10%. So our business geographically breaks down about somewhere, depending on currencies, but right now, since the dollar is so strong, the U.S. is about 57, 58%, Europe's just about 20%, Asia Pacific, including Africa, we have Africa, Middle East, and with Asia, APAC, MEA we call it, is about 15 to 16%. And the balance is Latin America and Canada, which is, you can put in your eye. It's about 5% or 4%. Our biggest clients would be, in order, Unilever, Samsung, J&J, AstraZeneca, Starbucks, HP. We have a big business with Novartis, Adobe, Dairy Management. So that gives you a sense of the spread, and GE is one of our biggest clients as well. Walmart, eBay, Chevron, and Shell. So that would be our top dozen clients. And those clients bill anywhere between $7 and $30 million a year. And it's a classic service business. You have, account executives who are pitching media. You have vice presidents who are doing, in theory, messaging strategy, and the senior relationship is held by the most senior person. So I've given you a very fast run through the business. Our competitors are names you may or may not have heard of, Weber Shandwick, which is part of Interpublic, Fleischman Hillard, which is part of Omnicom, Ketchum, part of Omnicom, Golan Harris, part of Interpublic, and then the 3 or 4 agencies that are WPP, Hill and Knowlton, Burson Marsteller, Ogilvy, and GCI, now Cohen & Wolfe. There are also some boutique firms that do only public affairs, APCO, some boutique firms that do only financial relations, Brunswick, FTI, and so those are boutique businesses in financial and public affairs. We have found that our sweet spot is deep industry knowledge, geographic expanse, a lot of big creative ideas. So, I don't know, the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, which you may have heard of, something about, that had its origins in PR. We worked with Ogilvy on that. I'm happy to share the credit, but that's been a great campaign for us, 10 years in length. Our digital business, which we really started in 1996 by doing crisis websites for people and all this, has exploded because of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We're hosting 900 communities on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for brands. So when you look at the Dove social site in the UK, where someone is asking a question about the product or the formulation or the sourcing, that's us. We private label that for brands. And why? Because we're cheap, we're fast, and we know what we're doing in that. We don't do apps. We're not. It's a quasi PR business. It's just people communicating with other people in social as opposed to communicating with reporters. The business has changed fundamentally because of the evaporation of mainstream media. If you think about it, the average local newspaper has half as many reporters as 5 or 6 years ago, since 2008. And if they exist at all, correct. And so what you're starting to observe is, though, the growth. So I think of the media as a 4-leaf clover. You have mainstream, you have born digital, social, and owned. I'll go through each one of those. So the mainstream, you know, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the FT, the Economist, brands that you know. Plus local newspapers, plus local television. Born digital, well, these are brands that you are quite familiar with. Huffington Post, Quartz, Politico, Business Insider. Business Insider is actually owned by a Yale guy named Kevin Ryan and Henry Blodgett, who's another Yalie. And they have, if you can believe this, 75 million unique viewers a month. 75 million. That is 50% more than the Wall Street Journal. That is 3x the New York Times, according to them, about business news. Now, the New York Times probably has a broader reach because of news, but that's impressive as hell. So invite Kevin Ryan, whatever you do. So then the next category is obviously social. I mean, I just would imagine that the first thing you guys light up in the morning is not what I do, which is to go to NewYorkTimes.com or theFT.com. You go to Facebook or Twitter, right? What do you go to? Facebook first? And you generally link to stories through Facebook. That would be your behavior, as opposed to going to media sources. You may go to media sources directly, but you're a Yalie and you're an exception to the general rule of, if I was at Ohio State, we wouldn't even have a discussion. It's Facebook forever. So social for us is, we now think of our brands having to go to platform and then to publisher and then to consumer. And so therefore, social for us is the locus on which we are putting tons of attention and if we have 900 communities, we are putting content into that. Example, we went to Twitter and said, hey, for the Oscars, we want to do a program with Dove on female self-image because 4 out of 5 tweets that women do during the Oscars are bad about their self-image. I'm fat. I can't do this, right? And we interrupt them and say, not so quick. You may be as hot as Jennifer Aniston. We don't know, but even if you aren't, it's just okay, And then we do PR. We do earned media stories about what we see on Twitter. So we keep compilations of how many are negative and how many people we change, and then we pitch stories to reporters. So it's kind of like this. Now, the owned part is fascinating. So I believe that every one of our clients over the next 5 years will be its own media company. Now, this is quite revolutionary, but your alma mater at GE has 4 million unique visitors to the Thomas Edison blog and to GE reports. And so Beth Comstock and gang have done a magnificent job of pushing people to GE content. It's amazing. And these are films on, I don't know, or photos on Instagram of attractive GE turbans. What? What? This is not like, good-looking girls. This is good-looking turbans. Okay, but they allow people to play with the turbans and design them and make them look pretty. And then they have a contest for who's got the prettiest looking turban. Okay, I don't get it, but you guys do, and I'm glad. But we actually have set up for various clients what we call creative newsrooms. So clients outsource to us this so-called owned property. So for a low-interest category, America's dairy farmers. This is a low-interest category. Sorry, milk doesn't sell. So milk sells, but anyway. But we actually take tours of dairy farms. We show people who are farmers using compost as a way of, powering their trucks or their machines, and funny stories that then we point bloggers to, farming bloggers. And then if it gets enough traction, then we can go to Business Insider and say, hi, we have a really great farming story here that you should link to. So we're creating a lot of content in these creative newsrooms. So we're hoping, like with social, that our clients will outsource their business to us of these creative newsrooms. And we've got them in probably 6 or 7 markets. And so, for example, for Flextronics, which is one of Renee's hot clients, they build, how many of you wear the digital devices on your Fitbits or any of these things? Any of you? None? You?
No, I have a set phone.
It's okay. Well, clearly you're a big user. Right. No, but like the Samsung thing of anyway, Flextronics builds all those. They build the PCs for Hewlett Packard. Anyway, that's what they do. So they want to trade up to having more like brand identification, so Intel inside. So we created a magazine for them called Innovation. It's a digital magazine. And so that's from our creative newsroom. That just gives you an example of what we're doing. So structurally, the business is run really so it started with geographies. So in terms of reporting relationships, it was all just local businesses, Chicago, New York, whatever, and they would report, in that case, to my dad. So all the geographic guys went to my dad. And then we eventually grew so big that you had to have regional managers, regional manager US, regional manager Europe, regional manager Asia. That was the whole business. So when I became CEO, I said, okay, that's fine, but we actually have knowledge that we should be passing between the offices. They're not a bunch of friggin' castles run by barons. And so, and my father ran the business like a wagon wheel. So he was Rome, and everything came through Rome, through the emperor, and that was good. And at that size business, it was perfect, and it worked. But when you get to another size business, it can't work like that. So you have to share knowledge across, and also it was leading to fights between New York and Chicago in particular, because I was quite early on made head of the New York office when I was 26, and we had like 12 people. And 4 years later, we had about 80 or 90 people, and it was getting as big as Chicago, and Chicago was starting to get pissed. And this is just what happened between geographies. And because it was Richard, and he was Dan's son, the Chicago people were like, I can't criticize him, so how are we going to undermine? How are we going to dig the thing around him so that he falls into the dirt? But quietly, though, and disappears. But I started to understand how...
That's Chicago.
That's correct. And I grew up there, remember? So I knew all the tricks. So in fact, what we started to do is try to bind the company together. And you bind the company together in part through practices. So people who knew tech, or people who knew health, or people who knew consumer products would be oriented horizontally and deal on client matters. So we would have a director of health, and the health person would be assigned, go get a health client in LA, work with the LA team or whatever it was. So we started to bind the company this way. Then some of our clients started to get really big, and the local geography guy in Hong Kong would say, I don't want to work on GE, it's only $5,000 a month. And our guy in New York would have a heart attack because he's getting $100,000 a month on GE, and he can't get the Hong Kong guy to move. So we created what we call a triangle offense, where you have geography, you have practice, health, tech, et cetera. And then the top of the pyramid, the client leader. So the GE person can say to the Hong Kong person, hi, I'm in charge. you're going to take this $5,000 a month and you're going to like it. And by the way, and if you don't like it, you can complain to Richard. And then we sometimes do subsidies. So if the Hong Kong guy is really getting screwed, the Chicago or New York, wherever the hub is, can do some transfer pricing and give him some money. Because there's nothing wrong with what the Hong Kong guy is saying, because he's getting too little money, and the Hong Kong GE office only wants to pay $5 a month. But you gotta play the game, so you gotta move money around. So that's the leader of the client. Now I'm running out of fingers, but now we have to go to a box, and let me try to explain the box theory. So what's happened in the last 5 years is that we've seen the business morph so that Edelman has about a 20% market share of the PR spend of the top 10 firms. So the math on this is, let's say more or less that, just for math's sake, business school people will get this quickly. So if the addressable market is PR and it's $4 billion for the top 10 firms, and we have a 20 share, we have $800 million, all right? So to go from a 20 share to a 25 share is hard work. Trust me. And so what you have to do is you have to grow the addressable market. So how do you do that? Well, you have to reinvent what PR means. And you have to say, all right, so what are the adjacent businesses that you can start addressing and start pushing yourself into? So what we've found is digital and advertising are soft underbellies for the holding companies. Why? Well, because what WPP has done is they have created 45 horizontals for Ford and Unilever and the hugest clients. But what have they not done? They haven't created that for Barilla or for the $4 or $5 billion company. So that's point of attack at the advertising guys. The other point of attack is in digital, they want to do big design and build. So if you're Digitas or if you're AKQA or whoever it is that are holding companies, you want the 25% plus margin business that is, okay, Shmuley wants to buy a Ford, and he goes to the Ford.com and he says, I want a blue, whatever, Taurus, and the engine just, and that's a design and build. And it makes him, the CRM program, customer relationship management, and it's a sophisticated thing. We are doing the dumbed down social media, chatting with people on the web about blah, blah, customer service, and you're mad at the line in Disney, here's a Coca-Cola for you. But that's what we do, but people are happy with that. So we're happy with that, and it's a 12 to 15% margin business, not a 25% plus. So the holding companies, digital, can't do it because they have all been acquired by these holding companies, and they're supposed to make 25% margins because Martin Sorrell and Morris Levy, in their wisdom, paid 3 times revenue for these businesses. So therefore, they have to make 25 to 30% margins. Therefore, we are safe in our little world of social digital, which I love. We're getting eaten a little bit by the new incomers, the small guys like We Are Social and Vayner, who are coming up on us, who are cheaper and sillier than we are. But that's okay, because we uniquely can do global and we uniquely know industries. So they'll get some, and that's fine. So okay. Competitors. So it's called market capitalism. So then I would just say, if you think of the marketing communications business as a box, it's been advertising's about $13.5 billion, media buying's about 10, digital's about 10, and PR's 4. So if you can reclassify this competitive set and say, okay, instead of marketing communications, we have a new idea called communications marketing. And communications marketing, this came out on an airplane for me. It was great.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's good. It was simple, too. Just change the words. But communications marketing means that communications and marketing are equal, that we appeal both to the chief communications officer and to the chief marketing officer, which within GE, as an example, there was marketing and there was communications, separate. And we want to bring them together. And it's maybe at GE it won't happen for us, but in smaller companies, in the mid-sized companies, Intuit, Barilla, clients that don't have such a sophisticated, huge apparatus, we can do this. And we have a new idea, which is, instead of just promoting brands, we have 2 other things. Evolve the brand and protect the brand. So what can't advertising do? It can't really protect, because it can't do crisis management. It's a one-page saying we're sorry, but it can't really do crisis. And the evolve part, most brands have a hard time taking on a bigger aspiration. So like the Real Beauty campaign for Dove, that's an aspirational kind of campaign. And so we're pushing our clients, like Gap, for example, to raise wages in stores. CVS, to ban tobacco in their retail outlets. That was $2 billion in revenue that they walked away from. They did it. Bye, and guess what? Their preference went from 9% to 14%. And they became the market leader in preference. I'd rather go to a CVS. I walk across the street to go to CVS because they're good people. And they changed their name to CVS Health. CVS Health from CVS. And uniquely, they can say that because Walgreens sells tobacco and they don't. Think about it. What a contrast. So it's smart, huh? So we're trying to get clients to change their reality so that they are actually evolved. And so that's why I love what I do, because actually what we do is we advise on what to do, not just how to communicate it. So, in fact, I'm going to give a speech to DePaul students for commencement. I'm going to bounce this off you guys. Good target market. I actually think that the speech I should give is about powerful ideas not any longer being about selling, but powerful ideas about being about starting movements and starting change in corporations. And that people who will come from our sector should not be simply put into the corner of, help me go sell this thing, it's already positioned. We should be in conceptualization, we should be in imagining, we should be in, hey, this is what this could be. And by the way, let us go test this in a community and whatever. And before I stop blabbing, because I really want to have a discussion, I just want to tell the story of our relationship with the Church of Latter-day Saints. So we were one of 5 firms called into Salt Lake, and my dad led the pitch. He was about 81 when he led the pitch, and he was doing well.
You realize 81 is a good
I got it.
Because
I understand.
Listening were about 80.
And there were the 12 who were the most senior people in the church. And this is probably late 90s, mid to late 90s. When was the Olympics? 02?
2001? 2002.
2002. So I think it was 95, give or take. And my dad started his pitch as follows. He said, I'm the grandson of a rabbi. My father was a devout Jew who retired at 65 and studied Torah until he died at 90. And I've read the Book of Mormon, and I wanted to say to you guys, in a more elegant way than that, that Jews and Mormons have a lot in common. We've been discriminated against. We believe deeply in family. We believe in community. We've been given back. And I just want you to know that I feel really good about working with the church. And I wasn't sure when I started this process that I would, but I really want to do this. These guys looked around. You're the one I want. And we want you to come to Salt Lake every month. And so he came with Michael Deaver, who was Reagan's, genius marketer. And these 2 guys, 165 and 180, were advising the church. And this is a true story. So, how does Richard Edelman get into this story? Wait.
You're much too young to be accepted by that.
Totally. Well, so first of all, they have me out, and it's the only client that begins every meeting with a prayer. And they prayed for my father and me for our wisdom. I thought, this is good. I like this. This is helping on all sorts of clients. But then the second thing was I was to organize a lunch in New York for President Hinckley, who was the head of the church. And so I had Time Magazine and Associated Press, but I had a really good friend who was a producer at 60 Minutes who worked for Mike Wallace. And so I invited him to come because I said, I think that the church ought to meet 60 Minutes. So my father sees the list of the invitees when he gets to the Harvard Club, and he just about has a coronary. He goes, all right, look, I know you're my son, but if this doesn't go well, I'm going to fire you. And so wait. What happens is President Hinckley, who's a fantastic man, says, because Mike Wallace asked the hard questions about, polygamy or whatever it is. Exactly. And Hinckley says, Mike, why don't you just come out to Salt Lake and see how we live? And Wallace goes, I'm in. I'm coming. And he goes, and he sees what happens at the church, and he sees that you give 10% of your income, and he sees that the family is all important, and he's completely taken with the church. And I think that 20 minutes of television did more for the Church of Latter-day Saints than any other thing. And in fact, President Hinckley wrote about it in his autobiography.
Yeah. And Mike Wallace did the introduction to that book. One of his books.
So it just goes to show you, take some risks, even in a family business. Because that was really...
If the Mormon Church were still, Mitt wouldn't have gotten that far if it weren't for that 60 minutes.
I'm afraid that's true. I'm afraid that's true. There's a lot of discrimination in this country.
Luckily for some of us, he didn't make it all the way. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no. I'm going to stay out of that one. I voted for Obama, though, just to be safe. So I suspect that you'd like to hear a little bit about, how Judaism affects, how I run the business or whatever. And so there are two or three things that are important to me. The first is ethics. And I learned this very early on from my old man. He told me a story about a client. We just won a big tourism account. And some guy from this country shows up and says, well, congratulations on winning the account. My dad goes, well, thank you. And he goes, now you can make the 5% commission out to such and such person. And my father stands up from behind his desk. He always wore a vest with his little Phi Beta Kappa key. And he stood up from behind his desk and he says, all right, you have exactly 30 seconds to get out of my office before I kick you in the ass so hard that you're going to be running down the hall. And just out. And he called me and he said, this is what I did. I said, congratulations, good. But ethics. Number one, never, ever, ever compromise that. Don't take clients. We had one argument, and this is, I think, an interesting argument. When I became CEO in '96, one of the first things I wanted to do is get out of the tobacco business because I thought it was bad, but I also thought it was bad for our business because healthcare is a big part of our business, like CVS, just practical. My father said, no, it's a legal business, and it's legal, and we should do it, and it's a lot of money for us, and so thank God, there was a boom in the economy. It was '98, and I just said, Dan, this is it. If we don't do it now, we're going to be never out. So we just gave it to some other guy and got out of tobacco. But so ethics is an interesting area to talk about. I think the second thing is we've kept this family-owned, and we don't take on debt, and we don't take on big risks, and our family gets along pretty well. We don't take dividends. We don't, live very high. We have a driver who drove us and back instead of the train. But other than that, it's pretty modest. Toyotas instead of BMWs. So here we are. I think, as a key part of that, we've never had partners. It's just our family. It's our family kind of, with the key people. We give them stock. We pay them a lot of money. We have a good year, but we're really serious about keeping control, and that's important. And I have two kids who are training like this, and they're working, and they're expected to work hard, and they don't get any favoritism. So they make it, they make it. If they don't, then we'll get professional managers. But they'll be owners, so that's important. And then the sort of last thing about Judaism is the importance of community. So we did the pro bono for the Auschwitz-Birkenau 70th anniversary and the renovation, and we've actually, I think, been pretty important in helping raise money from people like Ron Lauder, Spielberg, others. How many of you been to Auschwitz-Birkenau? It's the most important experience you can have. If you ever are in Germany or wherever, just go, because I understand. But in other words, you're dubious, and it's dubious that you will be on business in Poland. So my point is, if you're in Europe anywhere, go to Poland. I mean, if you're in Warsaw, go to Krakow. It's nicer. Yeah, nothing good about Warsaw. Sorry, beaten up in the war. But anyway, so I'm really proud of what we do for community. My brother John runs our foundation. He's deeply interested we match. If an employee is going to do a board or whatever it is, we give them the money to be on the board and do community work. And we do a lot of volunteer work, like the 9/11 Museum and Memorial. We do volunteer work for that, the whole launch of that. And so it's an important part of it. So I've talked for too long. So you have questions for me, comments, discussion about anything? And Renee, you should say a few things so I can eat. Say a few things.
Go ahead, he has a question.
Because he should be only 15 minutes, we'll go to another. Maybe you want to speak for 5 minutes and then we'll take 5 minutes of questions. Should we say something?
Well, I just think, it's really important to have mentors. I think that's, I've been very grateful to be in the business where my father and my brother have been my mentors, but I think wherever you are in life and having, and some of it's serendipity on how you actually end up in a business, because I did journalism first and was in the advertising business for a while, but eventually found my way into the PR business. And I think that, there are opportunities in life that will present themselves to you, and maybe you hadn't thought about it. But I think, actually I had a job in journalism that didn't work out, and my father said, come into the PR business, try it, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I wasn't planning on it. I went around it, having related skills. But I think that having a mentor and keeping up with people and having people who can counsel you along the way has been very important to me. And Richard and our company runs a trust barometer, which Richard can tell you a little bit about. But I think that issue has become very, very important. Trust in companies, trust in media, trust in your people like you, your friends, who you listen to, basically, where Richard mentioned before, where you get your news, but who you trust. And having people trust you are issues that we think about. And then the other issue that's a lot on my mind is the changing nature of media and news, and how we all, as a PR person, I would always be behind the scenes. I never wanted to project myself. Today in class, with Professor Sonnenfeld, we were talking about when should a CEO speak out on his own opinions, and do those represent those of the company. And I just think you have to be very careful today about, you want to project yourself, but when you do project yourself, you know that news spreads, and you just, more and more have to be careful. And when I was growing up, public relations, people would say to me, well, what does your dad do? And I'd tell them, and they'd say, well, what is that? And so I think my father, when we were growing up, had to constantly explain what PR was, and as a leader in the field, we have an opportunity, and Richard's done this, to follow the legacy of being a driver of what public relation is, as he said, redefining it, communications, marketing, bringing together the advertising, the brand, doing good, social responsibility, which your generation cares a lot about. And so it's fascinating how much business is changing, every business is being disrupted, the media business is changing, and so it's really interesting that we all have to constantly keep reinventing ourselves, learning new things, not just taking it for granted. If you're not innovating, if you're not staying on the edge of what's happening, you get quickly behind. So, I am passionate about technology, but also learning social media and knowing how to communicate in that way. You guys are born digital, so it's easier. But
Okay.
Thank you. Cal, I'm going to take your question, but I just want to make one comment. Just the fourth thing about Judaism that I noticed in your office the first time I met you, Richard, I don't even know if you remember this, was that, tell me, what was your name? Who worked for you? One of our
Allie Boger.
Yeah, Allie. So I come in, and what does the CEO of of the Edelman group doing? He's learning a new language,
Hebrew
of all languages. And so that was just fascinating. You talk about learning new things. In your 50s, you said we got to go back to the Bible and read the Hebrew language, learn the Hebrew language. So I thought I'd just mention that. Callum, we're going to open it to 3 questions.
Sure, yeah. So I was reading recently about the trust barometer, and you made some comments post-recession about how, unsurprisingly, banks and a lot of governments rate the lowest on that. How do you think banks have kind of rediscovered or reinvented themselves post-recession, or have they even done so in terms of the trust barometer?
Well, I think trust in banks in the United States has risen from the all-time low of 20% in 2009, but in Europe it's still devastated. In Spain and Italy, Ireland. Meanwhile, banks in China, India, Indonesia are trusted 80% because they're equivalent to modernity. So I think the problem for banks is just this constant kind of being dragged back. How many of you guys saw Blood Simple? Remember this movie where the guy, the hand comes out of the hand comes out of the grave? It's just like that for banks, because but think about it. The foreign exchange trading scandal of last summer, where it was disgusting what they were doing, fixing FX rates, and they were ripping off the British mortgage holder, because anyway, blah blah blah, and they were doing the same with mortgages, and it's just like one scandal after another of financial services. They just can't get out of their own way, and so what's happening is they're having to reinvent their businesses. They're selling off all their commodity businesses. So J.P. Morgan is now rumored to be getting out of oil trading because they can't do it. They can't supervise the breadth of operation. So and they also have to have higher capital requirements, right? Whatever it is, 8% equity instead of 5 or 6, it means that their return on equities are totally changed. So we're still in a recovery mode, I would say, and not helped by behavior. How about that? Yes.
Continuing my previous advertisement, I'm looking for some advice on PR because I feel fundraising and PR are in a sense similar, because we are always trying to target the right person who would like to support and give their money. And now we are also in negotiation with GE and trying to leverage Yale's resources for them. But on the other hand, we're trying to target Yale alumni. But I want to know some advice from you, how to target the right person for a project and how to tell the best story. Is that too generic?
No, I understand your point. So I would say that it's either a director of sustainability or a chief communications officer. It should probably be a company that has supply chain issues, arguably something to do with China, I suspect.
No, it's not about China.
Not where? Which part of the world, or global?
It's hosted by U.S. Energy Department. It's going to happen in California.
They're competing. 20 universities are competing to build the most sustainable house, and you represent the Yale group.
Yeah, it's the first.
I read your book, by the way.
Thank you.
So she said to me, because I'm in the real estate business, so I read it because she figured, okay, you're into real estate development, then you should be interested in sustainability. So
yeah,
that's a lead off to the question.
So you might want to try and find a local utility. You might want to try and find a company that, like Lennar, or something that's in the home building business. In fact, who knows this kid Miller from business school, who's in the class today? I forget his first name, but he's a tennis player, senior at Yale.
His name is Matthew Science?
Well, Matthew, he's the cousin of Lennar. So Lennar, Lennar, that's who I would go to. I'm networking for you.
Better than LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll keep thinking. Okay, next question.
So I'd love to know what you guys think about the incredible rise of user-generated content and how companies interacting directly with individuals and vice versa has changed your business, and how you think it's going to in the future.
So what's phenomenal is that we now find that influence is not just a function of university brand name or whatever. It is actually people who have passion, who have design skill, and others. So Mommy Blogger, et cetera. So we are recruiting YouTube stars and others to become producers of content for Starbucks or whoever else. And so they sort of self-create a community of this size, and we take them to a community of this size. So
Fundamental change, or is it just
completely, because we used to go to celebrities. You know, whoever the baseball player was, or a good-looking actress, or, you know, nice, not anymore. It's real people with, yeah, totally different. And celebrities have zero credibility in social, just about. Unless they really are, for whatever reason, green, which is rare. Yeah.
Is it okay then? Yeah, of course. I found your story really exciting and compelling, so thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask you about the ethical side of your business practices, which was really heartening to hear. We actually just had a class in business school yesterday on Enron, so I've definitely been heavily exposed to the other side, and so it's good to see people in a position of power in a field, doing the right thing. And I'm wondering though, you mentioned being in 66 cities.
Yeah.
16% of your business in an area of the world, where there's obviously some human rights issues, and I wanted to ask you about when you do see a client. Shell comes to mind, for example. I'm giving an outdated example. Shell from the 90s, Nigerian protesters, political prisoners ended up, Ken Saro-Wiwa being executed for his work against Shell. I'm just wondering, and that's obviously an outdated example at this point, but I'm wondering.
Chevron in Ecuador. Chevron in Ecuador.
Chevron, Ecuador. Yeah, there's obviously, a huge risk with the kinds of clients that you work with. Of having them get involved, or having them be involved in some questionable practices. And I wondered, how have you dealt with, or how do you foresee dealing with a client who you've already, you've started a project with or you've done previous work with, and then you realize that they're engaged in some deeply unethical work and it challenges your own morals? How do you deal with that?
Well, there's sort of two ways to do this. One is to quit and just say we can't. And the second is to try to move them towards a better place. And I think that the second option is a better option, actually. And that's not always accepted by my colleagues, but I'd rather walk towards a better place than run away. And listen, if we have the option of not having ever been involved, that may be better, but that doesn't work that way sometimes. And so if you're in, you may as well be in the tent, trying to fix things. Go ahead.
I'm going to say something and Toby wants to ask the last question, but do you know what the word Edelman means?
Noble.
Noble.
Yeah, well.
So Edel is Yiddish, right? For refined or noble. So that's
it's in German, too.
moving them in the right direction.
Well, I don't know. I hope, but it's presumptuous for me to say that we have some sort of monopoly on goodness. It's not the case. And we do work, and we work with the oil business, and we work on Arctic drilling. I think that's good. I think it's also good to work on the oil sands. Some of you would disagree with me, probably you, if you're a greenie, and that's fine. And people can have different points of view on this. And by the way, I have to say mine's partly geopolitical, which is I'd rather have oil from Canada than oil from Venezuela or some other of these funny business places like, yeah, that's right, that would be the right place. Yeah. Yes, Middle East. But there are others who say, we don't need this oil. We have plenty, and look, we have shale gas, and, this is ridiculous. This is all good for debate, but, in the end, I have to make a decision, so I do. Teddy Roosevelt has the best line. He said, the best thing is to make the right decision. The second best thing is to make the wrong decision. And the third and the worst is to make no decision. That's why I love Teddy Roosevelt. I don't think he had any trouble making decisions.
I named my son Teddy. So.
Oh, perfect. Oh, that's good.
So I have a quick question. So I've noticed recently, and it sounds to me like part of the public relations is for you is shifting also in a little bit of consulting because you're. So I'm just curious, you
want to know my most fun case? I'll give you a really good one. So
sure.
Tomorrow,
yeah.
I'm sitting with a client. This is a true story. We are planning a national rollout of his marijuana sales campaign. Yeah, the legal kind. I mean, for medicinal.
Only because we're on tape.
No. But for medicinal purposes only. I mean, Now you can edit this out. I cannot say, and I will not say, but
Willie Nelson.
It's Willie Nelson. It's actually not, but we'll let you fantasize that it is.
So
Go ahead.
I just just noticed, so I'm from Seattle and Starbucks is like,
Hence the marijuana connection.
Right, exactly, that's what I was asking if you're from Seattle, but, the little leaves over some of the pharmacies. Anyways, so I just noticed that Starbucks recently started
tell me,
promoting...
You're from New Haven.
I'm from Seattle, promoting advertising on commercials. I've never seen that before. Is that a new thing? That Starbucks, they have commercials now, probably maybe the last 18 months? I don't remember seeing it before. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
They've started advertising both in print and in TV.
Yes.
But
So what's shifted? Is it...
well, I think that word of mouth reached a saturation, and I think also, listen, of all the CEOs I know, Howard Schultz is actually the most exciting and willing to take risk. What he's done on race is unbelievable. To convene in 7 or 8 cities discussions among police departments and citizens, and people speak up and say, you beat me, and you're bad, and the cops say, well, I'm sorry, but this is our job to keep the order, and it's very raw. And what he did also for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and giving them jobs, and what he also did in 2010 to say, I'm not giving any money to political candidates. Why? Because you idiots can't work it out. So I'm organizing a boycott of political contributions. He got a call from all sorts of people, you can imagine, saying, how can you do that? You're ruining my campaign. Fix it. Cut the crap. He's an amazing guy. His origins as a Jew in Brooklyn are deeply important to him. He's a fantastic guy. Really, he should be president. I keep telling him this.
So no, I was thinking, it's just, I go to Starbucks all the time, and for me it's not a phenomenon, but it was just interesting. I thought it was like, oh, they don't need commercials, like who doesn't go to Starbucks? But it's just, I was just interested what created the shift.
Well, no, there's a thing called Costa Coffee. There are all sorts of imposters. Dunkin' Donuts, the worst. Even worse than that is McDonald's. Forget about it. No way. Always do Starbucks. And I don't even drink coffee. I just drink tea. But I do the one with the milk in it, whatever it's called, chai latte.
I love it.
I love that. It's sort of sweet, too.
Yeah.
It's good for you. It's really good for you. Yeah.
So I was wondering, you talked a little bit about cutting the underbellies away from some of these other divisions and merging boundaries. I was wondering, where do you think those lines should come from between, consulting and marketing and PR, or is it just as much as PR can take?
You got it. So it's a mosh pit, and whoever's got the best idea, I think the client will go for. I don't think there's any hard line anymore between, because when I started my career, it was the agency meant the ad agency. And the secondary agency was the media buying agency. And we were the peasants, believe me, like cleaning the doo-doo, here's the great ad campaign with Morris the Cat. Make Morris the Cat famous in PR. Okay, well, we can do that, or, Tony the Tiger or whoever. Well, we've grown up, and now the next thing is, do you have an idea that moves people, like eco-driving for Shell and design? Actually, at universities, we have a contest that kids can design an eco-car, and what goes the farthest on a gallon of gas. One car they did 257 miles, or some insane thing, designed by high school students. So anyway, eco-driving, and we had a group go around the world. Anyway, these are just PR ideas, and clients love these. The Taylors went all over the world driving on relatively few gallons. I can't remember. So yes, so as much as we can get, we will take.
So when I was at GE, I actually had the opportunity to work on the response to Fukushima, and that was something that your team was pretty instrumental in as well. So crisis management has kind of since then been something that's really of interest to me, and it sounds like it's a growing part of what you're doing too. Sure. I'm also interested in the whole life cycle of crisis management, where it used to be kind of the cleanup activity. It's now also identifying opportunities to prevent crises. So is that starting to resonate with your clients? Are they
completely? And I'll tell you that some of this is actually related to work we're doing with universities. So we work with Penn State, we work with Duke. To get the board of Penn State to agree to the NCAA sanctions was not easy, which meant to take the statue away, to take the victories away. These are people who are true believers in Happy Valley and Paterno, and but they had to accept their punishment and then also pivot towards taking care of kids and making that an important issue. And now they're back with football. They have their wins back, and they have their statue back.